So, what clutter do we pick up along the way in our lives, and what are some ways to identify whether we should keep those things or release it? What kind of decision criteria are we doing before we do that? So, if you looked at what things lurk in our homes, being Josh and Mai's home, in our closets, and these are things that are not essential to living in life, like clothing and toiletries and a bed or something like that. We kind of we've taken different approaches, and we've kind of ended up in different spots in life.
Sure. I mean, I still have a lot of my old collection of gaming stuff and just like Star Trek stuff and nerd stuff that I came up along the way with.
And some of the things that I wish I would have had in my childhood, I actually got rid of because I didn't realize like you were supposed to keep it. I think like my mom would sometimes get rid of some things, but really like in my adult life now, I've actually found more joy in giving some of those things away. And there's not a right or wrong, but the biggest question is like, what do you collect? And what have you actually gotten rid of that maybe you collected at one time? How do you bless others? So just think about this as we launch out onto the loop and discuss the joys of collection and dispersion today on Curiosity Continuum.
Hey everybody, this is Josh.
And this is Brian.
Thank you for joining us today on Curiosity Continuum. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Curiosity Continuum is a podcast and movement started by two lifelong friends who want to spark your curiosity, help you integrate information, and enhance your everyday contextual awareness in a constantly changing world. We're going to do this with you by reframing common, practical topics that help you explore, examine.
If you want to receive updates when new content is available, please be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you can receive notifications when there's something new to listen to. We appreciate you, our listeners, for engaging with us and sharing your own curiosities with your friends and with us as we explore topics together.
Yeah, and always you can find us, at www.curiositycontinuum.com. All of our social accounts are there. We, like Brian said before, we really want your feedback. We thrive on it. And we have talked to a lot of people who really are enjoying it. So we want to make this a show or just a little bit of your day or your week that you listen to. So this helps.
So jumping into the discussion today, this is called the joys of collection and dispersion. And we touched a little bit on in the intro. Some of the things that if you could be in the room right now while we're recording, this is Josh's
maybe you shouldn't be in this
nerd
room.
central station. And it's really, really fun. Now, if you look at our social media, you'll see some of the things kind of appear as like what's going on in this room. Some of the things you won't see what's going on because there's stuff in the closet and stuff. But they all kind of has a theme. It all is kind of reflective of things Josh loves, is passionate about. It's brought him great joy over his life. And I think, Josh, can we just talk about that for right
Sure.
now? Like just the joy of having those things around you that either brought you joy or it's a reminder of something.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to kind of preface this too. I think a lot of people, like when they see this stuff, they're like, I'm like, well, this makes me happy. They're like, oh, what? The stuff makes you happy? I said, no, it's the memories tied to the stuff. And so like, even like my gaming stuff, if I go back to my Nintendo stuff, my old Nintendo stuff, that every one of those games, a lot of those are games I had when I was a kid. I didn't buy them just recently. And so I just held on to them. And I remember like, if I put that game in and play it, I remember like a Mega Man 2 story was that my mom took me to get that game and it was pouring rain out. And it was like in the fall in Minnesota, and that was like a big deal. It was like 40 miles away. So I remember getting that, and I just love that feeling of playing that stuff and doing that again. And so I do like that. And then everything else too. I mean, I do kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit with some things, but other than that, it's good.
I do help Josh go down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Yes.
There's a lot of treasures at thrift stores and things where people have said, this isn't something that I value anymore.
Right.
But, a lot of times physical reminders is one of the reasons why we do it. As human beings, we need sometimes that analog thing to help us go back to a place or to whatever.
And I think too, like some of it, a lot of I have board games, not just video games. I have a lot of board games, or games that even Brian and I played, or games I played with my brother. Some of them I've been given and I haven't actually played them. What it is like a reminder to me that, I can just take that and we could play that and maybe have a great experience.
Yeah.
Or it's something that we do in real life. And sometimes to me, that's more important than like just thinking about it. I would rather do it.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn it a little bit too, because sometimes when you have those physical things, there's joy, depending on what it is, but other times there's pain. There's
Sure.
other things where, especially like if your childhood was fraught with a lot of drama and a lot of you know tension in the home or whatever it is. Sometimes like seeing that house or seeing something that reminded you of a stressful situation growing up, or like I remember when I was wearing this shirt and this happened in my home, or I remember like this is what I was doing when I found out like so much so passed away. Those type of things sometimes people hang on to, and it can turn more than just like these are the things I want to surround myself to bring me joy. Sometimes there's a push away.
Well, it's also a memory. And I think sometimes that things remind us of who we were so that it kind of like helps us on the journey of who we're becoming. And I've been, I always say this is kind of like a funny thing, but my wife refers to me a lot of times as a man child, where I have a big toy collection, and I'm in my 40s, and I have, all this stuff. Little kids come into my room and they're like just in awe, and I'm like, I get it. But it's not even that. It's just like, to me, it is a distraction from the world. But it does remind me of a more simple time. And I think when I wasn't like always like wondering what stuff was like or what's going on in the world or watching the news or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it is an escape for me too.
Yeah.
And it's a healthy escape because I just kind of put it away for a little bit. I come back out and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I can go along with my life. And it helps me.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing because it helps harken back to something,
Yeah.
and like I know for the small things I keep, if I find something, I remember. So there's this Legend of Zelda beach towel that we
Right.
got for like second grade beach day, and I like nagged my mom. I'm sorry, Mom, I nagged you for that towel. And we went but I remember my friend John and we got in major trouble because it was supposed to be like quiet time, and we definitely weren't quiet
You weren't
during
quiet?
that time.
Yeah.
And that towel, I remember that time. And so it's somewhere in my collection. I think somewhere it's hiding out. That's always a fun thing to do, and
Yeah.
kind of go through memories. What's interesting, so my grandparents have passed away, except for my grandpa's second wife. After my grandma passed on my mom's side, he remarried, but I didn't have as much of a relationship with her.
Sure.
And there are some things that we've gotten from them. Now there's things that my mom is kind of pre-giving just because she doesn't have need for it anymore.
Sure.
And it's really interesting. Some of the things I'm like, oh, this is really wonderful. And other things, I know it meant something to my mom. And it doesn't mean the same thing to me.
But it's important because your mom liked it?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Okay. I think some of the joy that people get when they go like antiquing or they go,
Right.
It's like, what is the story behind it?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and even in what I collect, which is a lot of video game stuff, if there's a story, an interesting story behind a piece, people love it even more. Even if it's not behind that exact piece. It's just like, well, this was a limited run of something and it just got canceled because somebody went crazy and just like forgot about it or whatever. People love those stories and everything they collect.
Yeah. And the experiences that those things go through, like, so as a musician, when you have an older instrument, as it's had a chance to be played like a bass or a guitar, and it has resonated, right? And it's been touched a certain way by a human being and played and played and played and played and played, there's a different feel to it because that instrument has been used, and you almost feel like you want to play something a certain way because of the way that instrument has been played. It's really interesting. We had a guy, so a lot of musicians nowadays too are playing with some alternate tunings as far as not just like I'm tuning my guitar differently, they're actually calibrating to a different attenuation because the 440 attenuation was not the norm until about the 40s. And so people have kind of calibrated differently. I played out with this guy and he actually tuned his guitar up a little bit, but the guitar didn't want to be there because it had spent its life in this particular tuning. And when you did that, it kind of settled back in. So it's kind of interesting how things almost have memories of their own.
Okay, so that's super interesting, and we were talking about all that. And so let's pivot a little bit. Let's start talking about like finding things that you like to collect, or if you don't really like to collect them, if you like to help others collect, which is like Brian does pretty much.
I'm Josh's Huckleberry when it comes to finding some treasures. I think for me, I actually enjoy the hunt a lot. It's kind of fun to go try to find it.
Yeah, it is fun.
Things. If anybody follows like the American whiskey world, especially with bourbons and things, people collect them or people just want to drink. Part of the fun for them is just going out and like seeing what's out there, and can you find some things out in the wild that you can't normally find.
Right.
And it's kind
It's
of
kind
like,
of like a natural high almost.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the joy of the pursuit.
Right.
And I think where some of that comes in for me is like I enjoy that. Like when I go shopping with my wife, and so
Mhm.
I'm one of those guys that actually likes shopping with his wife because I can engage in the process. What I don't want to do is just like have whatever's whatever like
Right.
we're shopping for.
Right.
It's like, what are you looking for?
Well, you kind of want to go buying.
Yeah.
You're not really shopping, you're buying. Like you have to have a goal.
Yep.
Like you can't just be like, "Oh, I'm just going to go and just wander around this mall." Be like,
right. Tired and shagged out pretty
Right.
quick. But yeah, if she's I need a pair of dress shoes that's open toe,
Yeah.
whatever.
Cool.
Then it's like I have criteria.
Yeah, you have
and
a
to me
mission.
that's fun.
Yeah.
The getting the thing at the end or getting the ribbon, it's kind of like signifying like you came to the end of a journey, even if it's like
Right.
finding a pair of shoes or something.
Right.
But in that, I like it because there's problem solving involved, or there's hunting, or you're thinking about what if it was here? Maybe I didn't check over here. Would this go better with this? Or what is there's a buying decision also. Now, most of us in the world don't have infinite money to just have
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to say what is most important to me.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of a fun thing to think about too. Like, do you enjoy the hunt more than the actual result?
Right.
Do you just want the result and do that? I mean, if you're a game player, do you just buy all the things that you need and all of a sudden you can just do whatever, or do you actually like to earn your way through? I think it's almost a commentary sometimes of how you want to enjoy your life.
Kind of also, I think, like if you collect something or you're looking for something, like you have to ask yourself a question. Do you just want like all of something? Like for me, like when I collect video games, I don't really like collect just random games. I usually try to get something that like I would actually enjoy. Like I would actually play or actually use. I'm not one of those guys that just like, I want every Nintendo game.
Right.
And I mean, that's a whole nother type of collecting too, I
Yeah.
think. Like my grandmother, like she was collecting mugs. And she collected like mugs. She had like hundreds and hundreds of mugs. I don't even know what the end game was. It was just, she enjoyed it.
She had mugs.
And it was fun,
Yeah.
for her. And that's cool. And I have a few of them in my collection now, kind of scattered around. But, so I think you have to kind of ask yourself like the application of this whole thing.
Yeah. So, in this, there's not like here's a right or wrong, but
Right.
like if you look at somebody's collection, you should ask yourself, why did they choose to collect it? Like, what does it mean to them?
Right.
Right? It's usually it's indicating something.
I'll tell you an interesting story, just a real touch base real quick. I never considered myself like a game collector until just a few years ago. And I think that was interesting because I had like games on a shelf and somebody said like, "Oh, you have a really nice collection." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Mm.
And they're like, "Oh, this is a game collection. This is actually something people do." I didn't realize that people did this stuff. Like, we're
interesting.
collecting this stuff. I just was like collecting stuff that like wasn't even really collecting. It was stuff I had.
Yeah.
That I just didn't want to give up. And so but then I really started going into the weeds in it a little bit.
Yeah.
So for me, that like the application of that was the search. It was the hunt. It was finding these things that I remember
Mm-hmm.
back to pull the nostalgia back. So that's what it is for me.
So it's like an inspiration thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, here's probably the thing to think about. So obviously I know Josh and I can look around and go, oh yeah, I totally understand why that's in his collection.
Right.
But there might be things that like you don't even know that your friends collected or did or really got into, just depending on where you're intersected with them in their life.
Right.
And it'd be a good question like, why did you collect this? Can you tell me the story behind it? Because I guarantee you that there's both and you might find joy in that. And in that same way too, when something maybe like, oh, this is something that I moved on from, you can give that or you can sell it, you can do whatever, and guarantee that's going to bring joy to somebody else. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoy the conversation around that because you'd probably be surprised about what somebody might say. I actually collected this, and they just might be a little shy about admitting that they had done it, or
Oh yeah, like
whatever.
a guilty pleasure type
yeah,
thing.
it's like, or this is only for children, but have fun with it because you'll learn something about somebody by doing that. So I guess until next time, this is Brian
And this is Josh.
for Curiosity Continuum.